cutting greenhouse gas emissions. So how does competitiveness come in? African farmers and agribusiness can produce and sell goods that meet global standards in terms of quality and price. This depends on technology, skilled labor, and good infrastructure. We can't choose sustainability or competitiveness. We have to choose both. If we ignore sustainability, we hurt the environment and future food production. And if we ignore competitiveness, African farmers stay poor. So we must combine both competitiveness and sustainability.
Okay, so we would be exploring. I'll be exploring different countries in the continent and how they imbibe the culture of sustainability and competitiveness. In African countries, they align agricultural production with environmental concerns while seeking market integration. The African Continent Free Trade Area is known as AfCFTA, is a key initiative to boost intra-African trade, balancing economic growth and environmental concerns. With over 54 countries involved, it provides a platform for standardizing trade practices, improving logistics, and incentivizing eco-friendly production. So the role of these African continental free trade area is to make it easier for sustainable products to be traded across Africa, and it also promotes green investment and cooperation in climate issues. In other countries like Rwanda and Kenya, they promote organic farming, and I think from the discussion that was said today, Nigeria can also be said to promote organic farming. Ethiopia uses resilient crops. The European Union CAP, Common Agricultural Policy, is a good example of balancing sustainability and trade. Through greening measures and eco-conditionalities for farm subsidies, the European Union has tied competitiveness directly to environmental performance. Countries such as Netherlands has maximized productivity using precision agriculture, circular resource, and maintaining high exports with relatively low environmental damage. In Brazil, the soy and beef industries have been under global scrutiny for deforestation impacts. In response to programs like the Soy Moratorium and the Sustainable Beef Roundtable, we are introduced to promote zero deforestation supply chain while maintaining trade volumes. Strong law and enforcement matter. Farmers follow rules when they benefit, like getting better prices. Training and technology access are essential. And we have to include the smallholder farmers because they are also key in the entire production, the entire value chain of agriculture. So from various case studies, to balance the competitiveness and sustainability, we have to explore climate smart agriculture, eco-certification and fair trade, infrastructure for post-harvest handling and logistics. We recommend some policies to be able to ensure that sustainability and competitiveness is in the society or in community at large. The policies we recommend is financial incentive, green loans, that's loans for farmers to be able to expand their farm, then use climate smart farming like drought resistant crops and agroforestries. We also improve the value chain, the storage, transport, processing, and every other thing that is involved in the entire value chain of agriculture. Then another thing, encourage circular economy, that is turn waste to wealth through biofertilizers, biochar, biofuel, and every other thing that would ensure that there is not so much waste being in our environment. Then also, we encourage building public and private partnerships and also harmonize standards across African countries. African countries should be able to collaborate more than having and make exchanging food products easier within the African continent than outside the continent. So, in conclusion, Africa can build a strong agri-food system that feeds its people, supports farmers, and earn money from exports, and also protects the environment. It's just need the right policies, practices, and partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for them again. We can't afford to choose between sustainability and competitiveness. We need to have both. Now I'll call on Moses Ayuade Afolabi for his presentation on policies. Weak government policy. I saw weak, but I didn't see government clearly. Okay, now I can see clearly. Policies. Okay. Please don't forget to note your questions. You write the name of the person or the paper and then note your question so that at the end of the day, we will have a plenary session where we have an effective and informed discussion.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Ayuade Afolabi. I'm here to present a paper with the title, Weak Government Policies, Keys to Ending Poverty and Nutritious Food Insecurity in Nigeria. On the outline, I have the introduction, the statement of the problem, literature review, research methods, data presentation, discussion. As well as the references there. Poverty and food insecurity have been issues of concern globally, and governments, international agencies, and non-government organizations have put in place policies and programs to address it. For instance, the United Nations put up the Sustainable Development Goals, in which we have the first and the second goal addressing issues of poverty and zero hunger in the world. Now, looking at what population has to do with food insecurity and poverty, about 735 million people across the world have been said to be caught up in the web of hunger, a rise by 391 million between 2019 and 2022, according to the World Health Organization. Statement of the problem. In Nigeria, in the midst of the Hausas, the Fulani, the Kanuri, the Igbo, and the Yoruba women of reproductive age, it has been discovered that to reduce population with a view to making sure that the issue of food insecurity is being addressed, contraceptive use has been introduced. But in this set of people, the outside, the Fulani and the Kanuri, the Igbo, and the Yoruba people, only 98.7% of them, when it comes to the Hausas, will not use contraceptive. While among the Yorubas, we have 66.7 of them that were not using contraceptives. And this one is counterproductive when we are talking about slowing down population growth with a view to addressing food insecurity and hunger. And in the Yoruba balance, it used to be said that so when the issue of food is sorted out of the issue of poverty, you must have done a lot of job by reducing what we call hunger and poverty. Now, governments have also come up with some other policies by which they aspire and try to address the issue of food insecurity and poverty. And as you know, policies that we are talking about, they are well thought out processes that are data supported. Now, in the light of this, why then do they fail when for example, the CBN worked on a paper whereby they look at all the policies that have been put in place since independence up to this period. And at the end of the day, they discovered that majority of all these policies fail. So in this paper now, we want to look at what is the reason why all these policies are failing. And in the literature review here, I have the definition of poverty as a multi-dimensional phenomenon as given by the United Nations. Then government policies, we see as strategies and plans to fix societal issues that are put in place by government and are being carried out by ministries of government. They work hand in glove to carry them out. When we now look at all this work that I've been talking about, there is this empirical review. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, sometimes in recent times, they call on the Nigerian government to make sure that they complete the remaining aspects of the household loans, money that they are being given to people, household loans, money that they are given to people. But COSAC has not deemed it fit to look at what if we give these people this money, Do they actually make use of it to the extent that it's going to reduce poverty or reduce hunger amidst the people? Also, again, one of the aides to the president also said that in Nigeria, despite the fact that we are saying the value of the naira is down, but he was of the opinion that if we take a naira and a dollar, that a dollar in the value of naira, that is 1,500 naira equivalent, can buy a meal in Abuja, and the meal that is suggested was that of Boli and Epa. The question is, are we going to rely on eating Boli as the 3 square meal in a day? And when the definition of poverty by the United Nations is that earning below $2 per day, earning below $2 per day. So in the light of this, we discovered that that position of the head of the president is not anything to write home about. When you also look at the methodology that I used in carrying out this research, the methodology that was used to carry out this research, we use a quantitative and qualitative method of research, whereby primary and secondary data were collected using surveyart.com questionnaires, in which we distributed 120 questionnaires to contacts that are related to this topic. And at the end of the day, 100 copies of the questionnaire were returned and were critically analyzed by the use of statistical data for package for social sciences, SPSS, version 2016. And coming from that methodology and with what we have here, like the table that I have here, the table here shows the population movement right from 1960 to 1980. It was discovered that by 1980, population of Nigeria grew up to 72,951,439 by 1980. And from there, it was coming down gradually. And it has been discovered that if it's going to now get to ground zero, it's going to take 75 years, that is 2100. That is when the slowing down of the population growth will get to the ground zero. And as at that time, 75 years to come, with the population that is increasing now, and this data that has been given to us here, it has been discovered that more work still has to be done concerning food production. And finally, in the concluding aspect of it, it has been discovered that all these policies that were being made, people that are directly connected with the policy that are being made, they are not being carried along right from the beginning. So we are suggesting that policies that will be made must be made by using the approach of a bottom-up approach, not the approach of designing the policies. For example, the IMF designed their policy and it has not been working well. It is very good under the European condition, but it's not working well here. Look at AMTI in Kwara State. That is an agricultural rural management research institute, AMTI. Immediately the World Bank removed their hand from that project. It's not performing. You can now compare that of the AMTI with IITA. Seeing the presence of the whites still partaking in activities of IITA make the activities still working well. We also look at what ethnic issues can also, the role they play. That when you are doing all this kind of work, you also must consider the religious and the ethnic underhands that will be coming in. For example, if we want to take data, getting the population, some people say we want the Christians to be more than the Muslims, and they are going to increase the population figure. Using also the contraceptives in some religion understanding, people will say they will not want to use it. And when you look at the impact of the use of these contraceptives on women, with some of the response that we get from the people that they say the negative impact that the contraceptives are having on women have been making them to be reluctant in using it. So we are saying that these policies of government will be strengthened when it is bottom-up approach that has been used. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Policy issues there. And we will have our questions later on. I'd like to call on Dr. Leye Babatola, effect of increase in carbon dioxide concentration. Okay, thank you very much. 10 minutes. Please, once she waves the paper, that means you have 2 minutes more. Round up, okay? Let's keep to the time. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm presenting the effect of elevated carbon dioxide concentration on growth and nutritional composition of amaranth and jute leaf cultivar. These are the outline. Since the inception of this program, we have been hearing about climate change and its factors and some of its effects on plants generally. But a lot of findings have revealed that climate change is linked to elevated atmospheric carbon dioxide concentration, which in turn affects plant cultivar. It increases the photosynthetic rate and enhances the photosynthate accumulation. And therefore, it alters a lot of things. So this study is aimed at looking into what impact does it have on some of the food substance that we consume. And for the sake of this project, we did a survey to look into the common vegetables that are usually consumed in Nigeria, in the 6 geopolitical zones of Nigeria that are having medicinal property. And that was why we were able to come up with 2 of them for this presentation. Then, firstly, the chamber was constructed, that is a CO2 control chamber, and the seedling was raised, and they are portioned and distributed into those chambers. We have the control, then we have the one of 400 micromolar, and we have that one of 800 micromolar, which is taken to be on the high side. Then these are the equipment that were used for the analysis. Also, when those plants were being grown in the seed and the chamber, at interval of 7 days, the morphology of the plants were taken, that is the growth parameter, the leaf area index was taken, the height, the stem size, and the chlorophyll contents were taken. Also, the biochemical acids, that is the phytochemical constituent of the content of the vegetables, are also determined, that is the total phenol content, the total flavonoid, and the proximate analysis, which is a representative of the food nutrition. And the data was analyzed. Then these are the results. Because of my time, let me run through the results and go to my findings. These are the results. It was observed that the increased CO2 concentration significantly stimulates the growth of the vegetables, and this was compared with other findings, and it was in correlation. Then we also observed a reduction in the stem size of the vegetables due to their response to the growth, to the concentration. So they grow faster and they develop a stunted stem when it is being compared to the control. Then it was also observed that the leaf of that of the control was bigger than that of the ones grown under elevated CO2 concentration. Then the vegetables at the elevated CO2 concentration exceedingly have high chlorophyll content. This could be due to the utilization of the CO2, the assimilation of the CO2 that is being used during the cycle by the plant. So significantly, the increase, those plants that were grown under the increase or elevated CO2 concentration, it was reflected that they have higher total phenol and total flavonoid content. However, the nutritional analysis that was conducted on the harvested shows that there was a significant reduction in fat content, the fiber content, and the protein content when compared with the control. So this finding was, this study was concluded that elevated CO2 has a significant effect on nutritional constituent of green leafy vegetables with stunted stem width, which could affect the normal cultivation if it is being cultivated on field, and which will in turn result in scarcity of that vegetable for household consumption. And this study suggested that the cultivation of the food crop, that is the vegetable, should be cultivated using smart agriculture, whereby there will be an information that the amount of nutrients needed by the soil that the vegetable is being planted on will be sent, and that person will actively respond. So smart culture, climate smart agricultural practice is encouraged to prevent non-availability and insecurity, as well as sustainability of the nutritional value of the food, of the plant. We would like to acknowledge the International Foundation for Science, IFS, for providing grants for carrying out this research work, and also want to appreciate ACPRI for their efforts in putting this conference together. Thank you.
The next speaker is Bolarewa Mojisola, an assessment of filtration membrane. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, fellow researchers. Once again, my name is Good afternoon once again, fellow researchers. My name is Olaniwa Mojisola Adireke from University of Ibadan. I will be presenting the research on assessment of low-cost filtration membrane for water purification, co-authored by Wasiu Ramat Ashfat. My outline, from findings have shown that demands of water by man for survival has been on the increase over a period of time. And this point of storage and point of collection, water keeps getting contaminated. And as a result of this, the water becomes unsafe for consumption and it leads to poor hygiene. And records have shown that people have died across the world due to consumption of poor or bad water. So there are different means and routes or techniques, so to say, by which water becomes contaminated by pollutants. You can see the picture of the girl there. Look at the water being contaminated by solid waste. There's another picture showing a conventional route that by means of via which water becomes contaminated. Water is essential for survival. Nobody can survive without water. It's a universal solvent, colorless, odorless, tasteless, and transparent. It occupies very large percentage of the earth crust and about 55 to 70, depending on the size of the person, not less than 55% of the human body contains water, and also about 70% of water consumed by man goes to agriculture. Benefits of water to humanity, mankind. There are numerous, as we can see, and continue to discover the uses of water day in, day out. We have sources from surface and ground means. So, and World Health Organization and UNICEF has worked on water for they have been working on water for decades now, and we've been able to come up with research on whether water is sufficient in a community or not. The diseases that have been emanating due to consumption of bad water, they are so numerous, they cannot, everything cannot be mentioned here, but as out of some of these include cancer, endocrine disturbance, gastrointestinal disease, learning ailments, and so on and so forth. Even as far back as 2023, Al Jazeera picked the news on outbreak of epidemic in Gaza due to water contamination. Also, outbreak of cholera in eastern part of Africa due to water contamination. So as a result of this, quest for water, pure water or purified water has led to the discovery of ceramic filters. Because basically water is purified by filtration, coagulation, and sedimentation. But essentially, it involves the usage of ceramic filters. And so this research was aimed at assessing the domestic usability of low-cost filtration membrane for water purification by means of physiochemical properties, bacterial count, and presence of heavy metals. So the objectives are there, they fall in line with the goal of the research, and the scope is also there. Materials used involved kaolin from Osun State, also clay from Osun State. The research actually took place in Osun State. Processed cow bones from sourced from a market in Ibadan, Oyo State, as well as rice husk. So these materials were milled, air classified, and dried. And also the cow bone, for the cow bone, these were taken through a series of processes, as we can see, following the British standards there. the rice husk was milled and sieved at that size. The kaolin too was taken through the mineralogical composition and the oxide content examination. These processed materials were weighed and mixed to homogeneity, and thereafter we have three compositions, A, B, and C, tagged as CFA, AP, ceramic filter pot, CFP, A, B, and C. So taking through these compositions through these steps to have finished bodies of ceramics with the green strengths. These were dried and came fired and also taken through a series of physiochemical and bacteriological tests. These tests include pH, hardness, alkalinity, turbidity, TSS, total suspended solid, total dissolved solid, TDS, dissolved oxygen, DO, biological oxygen determination, BOD, chemical oxygen determination, COD, salinity, electrical conductivity, flow rates, and heavy metals, because iron and lead, we don't want them in anything we consume. Even apart from human consumption, by the time we want to make our wares, ceramic wares or glass wares, we don't want them because they continue to remain as contaminants. So results from the mineralogical composition, we have this peak for the kaolin, the oxide content also for the kaolin. For the cow bones, we can see the presence of hydroxyapatite. And then, having produced these spots, they were taken through the test. The results from the tests, we can see the values for pH, hardness, alkalinity, and so on and so forth. So for the bacteriological counts, we have these results. And when compared with the international standard, particularly Health Canada, it was discovered that 2 of the pots scaled through, while one needs to be re-examined, maybe in terms of composition, to make it also durable for the expected task of water purification. So just one of the pots during the flow rate test. In conclusion, we could see that it was discovered that firing contributed to the 4 pore size determination. Kaolin alone with the burnout material would not be durable enough, and so it was strengthened with the red clay. We could see that it was the competition just to enhance the plasticity. Also, the amount of burnout material included will determine the flow rate of the pot in question. A statistical analysis revealed that best results for ceramic filter pot A was ceramic filter pot A gave best result in terms of hardness, TDS, COD, and alkalinity. Ceramic filter pot B gave best result on DO analysis and pH as well. Furthermore, ceramic filter pot C in terms of TSS, BOD, EC, flow rates, heavy metals, and gave best results and have good results in terms of microbial analysis. At least we could see that there were no growths when these were examined. Finally, material composition for CFPC gave the best result in treating the selected stream water, which was UI Aberdeen stream water, and that's so the composition is good enough for further investigation and usage. Thank you for listening. Okay, so we'll call our next speaker, Patricia Ajayi. rice production, competitiveness, and sustainability.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patricia Ajayi. I wrote this paper with Dr. Adiola Olajide. We are both from the University of Ibadan. We are talking about rice production. I want to look at how competitive is it to produce rice in Nigeria and how sustainable is it. So when I took a look at literature, I discovered that a lot has been done on rice competitiveness. And so we decided to do a systematic review. Let's look at what other authors have talked about in terms of rice production in Nigeria and how sustainable it is. But before we go on, we did a little background study. And that is to show that over 70% of Nigerians are smallholder farmers, and they farm at the subsistence level. And Nigeria has so much hectares of land for which it can use to farm so many products, of which rice is one of the major products. Now, Nigeria's rice rose from 3.7 million metric tons in 2017 to 4.0 million metric tons in 2018 and reached a peak of 5.2 in 2020. However, despite this, only 57% of the 6.7 million metric tons of rice consumed in Nigeria annually are produced locally. The deficit is made up by importation. Ironically, Nigeria is said to be the largest producer of rice in West Africa, yet the largest importer of rice in the region. What an irony. Now, rice has become an important staple diet in many households in Nigeria, such that more than half of the people eat it. In a day, a family will eat rice at a meal, at least every day. And so it has become an important cereal. And therefore, because it's an important cereal, it's also important that we learn to produce enough for us to eat and then think about what we're going to export. However, literature also shows that in Nigeria, many of the rice are smallholder farmers. And so, and they often lack access to good fertilizer, high-yielding seeds, and they also lack the necessary technique to harvest, to destone, to polish, and to market the rice. But, and then these have resulted in a low competitiveness of the rice processed in Nigeria in comparison with rice imported from Asia. But however, we have also discovered that many Nigerians prefer imported rice because, one, they feel that it's easier to cook and it doesn't have a lot of stone. But besides rice mechanization, Nigeria's rice yield is one of the lowest. I've said that. However, government has made a lot of efforts by providing machineries for mechanization of rice production. Again, its adoption is still low due to a lot of bureaucratic processes and insufficient professional machineries to go around. And then Since about 80% of farmers that are engaged in rice farming and smallholder farmers, they earn no incomes because they have limited access to credit facilities, also making it difficult for them to hire tractors. They also do not have the technical know-how to operate these tractors if they do hire them. And the people who hire these tractors out to them are usually not patient enough to, put them through. So I think I have said this. And then there's also the issue of processing, destoning and polishing should be done to international standards so as to attract domestic consumption. Again, I have also discovered in my interaction with people that people don't want to consume Nigerian rice. One, they'll tell you that they don't have time to wash off the stone. And somebody once told me one day that it has too much stone. And I looked at him, and within me, I said, but you grew up in the village and you ate this. And you came up very well. So why are you now doing that? However, we face a lot of challenges. And these challenges over time has not helped rice production to be competitive. This table shows that over the years, production of rice has actually increased, but at a slow pace. But we are not there yet. We still have a deficit of about 40%, which was what we were told at the plenary session. Now, making up for that shortfall is a big problem because of the insecurity situation in the country. In some parts of the north, they have to pay the bandits to allow them to farm. They pay them a token every month so that they can farm. And many of them are engaged in rice farming. So each month when they don't pay the bandits to allow them to farm, they come and then they burn their products now. So that's a big problem which we need to tackle in Nigeria as a country. Now, what then is competitiveness? When we talk about competitiveness, there is no single definition to competition or competitiveness. It depends on the angle at which you want to look at it from, and also devise indices with which you can define what you want your competitiveness to be. But however, competitiveness can be defined as the ability to face competition and be successful when facing that competition. So you must have wherewithal to be able to compete. And then it also means your ability to sell products that meet demand. If your product does not meet demand, then you won't be able to sell it. So it then means that you need to take into consideration, is your product price competitive? Will it sell at that competitive price? Now, if your product is going to be price competitive, what is the quality? And what quantity are you going to put out there for people to buy? At the same time, you should also ensure that your products can earn you profits over time that will enable you to thrive in that sector. So competition can also be said to be within the domestic market or at the international market. It is therefore a relative measure. It is, however, a broad concept, and there's no agreement on how to define it or on how to measure it precisely. On the other hand, we cannot talk about competitiveness and not talk about sustainability. If we want to be competitive, then we should be able to sustain that level of, and then we don't halfway through. Give me 2 more minutes to sustain that, whatever. So sustainability requires an integrated approach that takes into consideration environmental concerns along with economic development. Therefore, for rice production to be sustainable in Nigeria, it requires a shift from traditional farming practices to more efficient and environmentally friendly methods, such as the system of rice intensification I think we also mentioned this on Tuesday when we had one of the plenary sessions. And part of sustainability includes optimizing water use, improving soil health, and reducing post-harvest losses and wastages. Now, focusing on these areas will help Nigeria achieve rice self-sufficiency while minimizing environmental impact. So, what do we mean by systematic literature review? What we are simply trying to look at is what has been done in this area. And we try to do this by collating all the literatures that we done. We did this using the Prisma method, yes. So what we did was to search for scholarly literature in this area using keywords. First, the keyword of rice production, the keyword of competitiveness, and the other keyword of sustainability, and then bringing all the keywords together. So in a nutshell, what we discovered was that, yes, a lot has been done on competitiveness, and a lot of the studies show that we can be competitive when we produce rice, but the sustainability issue, it still remains inconclusive. So we have concluded that we need to put in place so many things for rice, for us to be self-sufficient first in rice production, be able to feed ourselves first before we can now export out. So then what is the way forward? Competitiveness and sustainability and all that stuff. Well, we need to improve productivity, we need to enhance quality, we need to promote efficient use of resources like water and land, and then also foster fair trade practices, and while also supporting smallholder farmers to earn good income. And then, of course, we need to adopt smart farming techniques so that we can increase yield. And we also need to connect farmers with the people in charge of processors, train them to be able to operate some of these machineries, and then so on. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, thank you. We'll call on Princess Nwankwo, Energy, Climate Change, Agriculture Network. Energy, Climate Change, Agriculture Network.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Princess Wanko. This paper was co-authored by Dr. Mojisola Bolariwa, and it's titled Energy, Climate Change and Agriculture Nexus in Nigeria. Actually, the thought of this topic came about when I decided as an engineer to provide something that could fit into the theme of this year's Circularity conference. And so I decided that instead of looking for oil and gas, which is energy as it were, how would it impact on agriculture? And the findings are amazing. So we'll use this outline. And of course, the impact is, I'll start for my introduction to say that the energy, fossil fuel and not fossil fuel, I'll be considering together. So, but in the fossil fuel energy, where you have to look for it, we will call exploration, appraise it, say how much is there, produce it, bring it to the surface for use, and then transport it to the final end users. What does it mean for agriculture? In the first place, when I go out to look for energy, fossil fuel energy, the exploration area is already condemned for use of agriculture. You can no longer use, once I find or I do not find, once I'm looking for petroleum in an area, that area can no longer be considered for farming. And of course, when you have found it and you are producing from that area, like we know happened in Port Harcourt, in Yogoni, when you find it, a lot of things come into place. And then once you start producing, forget about production of agricultural goods and services there. And of course, part of our methodology, we're using the descriptive methodology that we design to design questions. We're trying to ask to the, so it's the questions are, what aspects of agriculture require energy input for success? And secondly, in what ways can energy use be responsibly applied in agriculture and vice versa to ensure no threats to climate change? Again, we're bringing climate change into this. It has to be responsible use of energy to avoid climate change. So the theoretical framework adopted is anchored on the theory of change, which is a process that is meant to evolve an articulated sequence of events that will eventually usher in the expected outcomes while minimizing the non-necessary outcomes. Is it going? Okay, so energy, simple, ability to do work, but there are several forms of energy, and energy can be, people and scientists have benefited from the use of the transformation of energy from one form to the other. The kinetic energy, the mechanical energy, the sound energy, the light energy, all of which will be important in this discussion, because let's say I'm talking about light energy and you are a farmer in the village, you will need light to see, you will need light if you are working late in your farmlands. And then of course, sound energy, you want to transmit sound to the other person. I'm about to leave, where are you? Can we close together? So all of those will come into play. There are essentially 3 levels of application here when I'm talking about energy. So the basic level will be the human energy. That means my ability to do work. I'm going to take all the physical energy from the human beings. So I'm going to hold myself. I'm not using mechanized energy to feel or tell. There's also animal energy. That means you're using energy from animals to pull or push or till from your farmlands. And we know all of this about the camels. We know about all the farm animals that you use. So all of this often depends on the income level of the farmer. The low-income farmers who usually want to use human energy, you are doing all the job physically, you are hiring physical hands, human energy. But if you have gone to the middle class, then you want to bring in, you are able to afford the camels, or if you are high class, income level, you can also use the fossil fuels. You buy fuel and diesel to power your mechanized engines, and then you achieve better success in the farm. So basic introductions, climate change, how does that concern us? So the long-term shift in temperature and weather conditions is what we call climate change. And we also know that fossil energy promotes greenhouse gas emissions. Usually, let me say, petroleum, as it were, has three components. It has the natural gas component, which is the gaseous form of petroleum. It has the liquid component, which we call the crude oil component, and it has the solid component. So when you hear petroleum, it just arranged within these ones. But usually, if I burn petrol, gasoline in my car, you will see that I am emitting greenhouse gases, which would affect the environment. However, the carbon dioxide that is being emitted is also one of the basic requirements for photosynthesis. That means it has positives, it has negatives, but if we're able to work around these three, as it were, we can have the optimum benefits. Agriculture, I don't need to say this, everybody has been talking about it, but it pleased me to note that it comes from the Latin root, agri for field and cultura for cultivation. Energy is key catalyst for growth in almost all human endeavors, including agriculture. Agriculture in itself is an energy conversion process, namely the conversion of solar energy by photosynthesis to make food that we can store as carbohydrates in plants, which we eventually depend on for human sustainability and animal sustainability, who will feed on this food. Agriculture also provides raw materials for manufacture of biofuels. So you see, I am going to make, if I decide that I want cleaner energy to ensure climate change reduction, I'm also going to depend on agricultural plants like sugarcane to make bioethanol and biofuels that will help me reduce the effect of the fossil fuel conditions. Then I wanted to talk briefly about the area of our study, Nigeria. So all of this is well known, our positioning, so I won't spend too much time on that. Again, that is our study area. Now, I decided to just put up this table just to show you. My table is not on the board, but I'm wondering why. So the table just shows you the low, medium, high income positions of the house and how it's affecting the use of energy. And you can see that apart from all of this, when you have produced your crops, there will be post-harvest processing where you also need, sometimes you use, if you're coming from the low income household, you'll be using the sun, for example, to dry your crops. But if you have, you're coming from the high income household, you may be using fossil fuel driven machines to dry your crops and to transport it to the final end users. The nexus between energy and agriculture has the direct input and the indirect. The direct is one I have just been telling you about, like using it to dry, using the machines that are powered by diesel or gasoline. We call gasoline petrol to power your machines. But there's also the indirect one, which is the energy stored in mineral fertilizers, chemical pesticides, insecticides, and herbicides. All of those store indirect energy that you can use. And okay, so the traditional agricultural method is the one that you're using, like we've always said, organic. You make sure you're using organic methods to sustain the land, but the modern agricultural methods is the one you're using your fossil fuel energy. So the Nigerian example lags behind in modernized energy use. So it's based on the animal and the energy, animal energy, because it's the mechanized form is not as abundant as it is in developed countries. This is shown where I have compared Nigeria. Again, this slide is not showing the Nigeria with USA because that is one of the ones you can use. Another problem we have is that Nigeria does not have enough data to show the comparisons between most of the data we have used here were actually even got from papers written in America. We couldn't find the average range of females when compared to males involved in agriculture. And I have this slide here, which was showing you how to convert natural gas to fertilizers, which you can see me about later. Conclusions, energy, climate change, and agriculture have interdependencies, and these suggest natural harmony for sustainability in the human race. The benefits cannot be overemphasized. Energy policy formulation should bring together national energy development policies with locally perceived priorities. Plans with higher yields should be identified for future studies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, when you hear the word nexus, you're looking for the negatives. Thank you for giving us the positive side of the nexus. Okay, thank you very much. Let's have Caleb Oluwatobi Onibon. Is that correct? Is it AK-47? They said AK-47. Okay, it's not you. Okay, thank you very much. He'll be speaking to us about rural household livelihood diversification choice in Benin, somewhere in Benin.
Thank you so much. All right. Bonsoir à tout le monde. Je suis content d'être ici. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm very happy to be here. It's not working. My God. Still not working. All right. Okay, my name is Oluwatobi Caleb Onibon. So I'm to present on rural household livelihood diversification choices in Atakora region, Benin Republic. So here's my outline. So we all know that in sub-Saharan Africa, including Benin, agriculture remains the cornerstone of rural livelihood, contributing to GDP and also to the employment. But this agricultural sector is strengthened by natural hazards prompting rural households to diversify their livelihood strategy. And if I should ask you, why did we come to this conference right now? You will tell me that you have both two types of reasons, maybe internal or external reasons, like maybe your supervisor has told you to come, and that's the internal, and maybe you have never visited Benin before, and now you are here in Benin. The same applies to those people living in rural areas. They deserve diversify because of both internal and external reasons. It may be human, financial, natural, and also physical. So what's the problem? What are we trying to save with this very study? We've noticed that farming alone is no longer sufficient to ensure food security and sustainable income to farmers. And despite this growing interest around floods, droughts, and soil degradation, there is lack of empirical evidence that drives livelihood diversification choices in the northern part of Benin, specifically Atakara region. Here's my state area. You can see the Republic of Benin and see where Atakara region is. So what's the study? The main objective of the study is to examine the livelihood strategies adopted by the rural household in the study region. Specific objectives were to identify the main livelihood strategies adopted, to analyze the key factors influencing household choice of livelihood strategies, to assess the relationship between different livelihood choices. This is the conceptual framework I've made use for my study. I've already talked about it: the human capital, financial capital, natural capital, social capital, and that has an impact on the determinants factors which may comprise age, gender, and all the rest. And these now have an impact on the livelihood strategies, which may be on-farm, off-farm, non-farm activities, and then have a final effect. So here is the methodology I made use of. And because of time, I made use of both qualitative and quantitative to analyze the result of my study. I've collected about 405 data. Yeah. So because of time, this is the result of my study. The Atagora region has actually been stratified into 3 specific regions: Bukumbe, Kuonde, and then Tukuntuna. And then you can see that male were more represented, and majority of them have attended primary school, and majority of them has also married, and all of them make use of firewood. So the descriptive statistics of the livelihood strategies adopted in rural household shows us that the strategies, the on-farm strategy, which comprised of agricultural strategies, has been most represented. You can see that one person has said that in the past, land ownership for agriculture was crucial but soil fertility issues has reduced crop yield, making it hard to sustain household. We've seen in our study that specifically major activities were found: on-farm activity, like agriculture, and then off-farm activity, forest-based activity, and then non-farm activities, that is other activities. And then the testimony of this person is telling us what is happening on the field. In terms of off-farm activity, when we ask them, why did you go into forest-based activities, people will tell you that, okay, farming was unproductive. And now he is trying to, go into forest-based activity because of family healthcare issues, education, and social needs. In terms of non-farm activities, somebody said that he went into pretty trading after repeated low yield. This is to tell us why people are diversifying their activities. We also went and then used the MPV to look at the determinants of the livelihoods decisions, strategy decisions. So because of time, we noticed that age was significant, education was also significant, like other rural dwellers tend to engage in forest-based activities over agricultural or non-farming activities. Education, in terms of education, each additional year of education increases the livelihood of on-farm employment by 29%. And an interviewee asserted that he was unable to attend university, but having completed at least secondary education allows him to diversify his farm production. We also saw that workshop attendance significantly encourages on-farm activities. Remittances negatively affect on-farm activities. Dependency ratio increase the livelihood of diversifying into off-farm and on-farm activities, and also land ownership increases the livelihood of off-farm and non-farm activities. In conclusion, rural households in the Atakura region primarily engage in farming and livestock rearing activity guided by the accessibility of some specific livelihood assets that we actually mentioned. These dominant on-farm strategies are increasingly limited by striking of lands and then vulnerability to climate shocks. Livelihood diversification decisions are significantly influenced by socioeconomic, demographic, and institutional factors. And also addressing these very determinants is crucial for promoting profitable and sustainable livelihood diversification in the study area. So the policy recommendations are the following. We need to promote sustainable land management in the study area, enhance climate resilience, encourage livelihood diversification, and also develop policy that address the specific needs of rural households in relation to land tenure and access to resource in the study area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. He saved how many minutes? Oh, it was just on time. Okay, we're just on time. Thank you very much. So now we have Dr. Adurami Dawa, Modupe, remediation, penetration, or something of that nature. Yes, but you have a second word there. Prevention. Oh, potential. Oh, sorry. Have I missed out? They said I missed out one. Sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry, I missed out Ayola Ayodeji. I'm sorry, please. Oh, forgive me. What? And it's on my neck. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adefoyeke Aduramigwa. I'll be making a presentation on behalf of three of us, Obiagiwe, Juliet, and Adejumo Sepawa. Okay, so the title of my presentation is Remediation Potentials of Fungi Isolated from Oil Polluted and Heavy Metal Contaminated Soil and their effect on food crop production. As we all know, agriculture is very important, and we are talking about food security. If we are having a problem of contamination as a result of pollution, the use of insecticide, pesticide, that our farmers are using, this pesticide, this herbicide indiscriminately. So we are having the issue of contamination, and then we also have the issue of oil pollution. So we are now looking at methods that we can use to recover our soil. So we look at micro-remediation. We are looking at the use of fungal organisms to break down or remove contaminants from soil and groundwater to protect human health and the ecosystem. So, and when we employ remediation, especially micro-remediation, the residues of micro-remediation are harmless products, which include carbon dioxide, water, and cell biomass. And of course, the carbon dioxide can be used by plants. Oil exploitation and exploration have resulted in the pollution of soil, as Dr. Nwako was speaking. And we know that various environments are affected with this pollution. And then also, different anthropogenic activities also contribute to contamination of our agricultural soils, and they pollute our soil with toxic metals. They cause reduction in organic matter, deficiency, and depletion in soil nutrients, and so on. However, physical methods and chemical methods are expensive, labor-intensive, and they are not safe. So we are looking at innovative and cost-effective methods, cost-effective and environmental and friendly method solutions, like the use of biological control methods in remediating our soil. So crude oil and heavy metals in the soil can be removed by introducing specific cultures of organisms that can degrade various hydrocarbons and heavy metals. So the objective of this work was that we want to identify soil-borne fungi in heavy metal contaminated and crude oil polluted soil that can be used in bioremediation. And then we also want to determine from our samples the fungus with best uptake and degradative ability in heavy metal and crude oil contaminated soil. So, materials and methods. This work was conducted in the Department of Crop Protection and Environmental Biology, the phytopathology unit. Sorry, so heavy metal contaminated soil was collected from the abandoned dump site of a defunct SI battery company at Orile Kumapai village in Ibadan. And then the crude oil was sourced from Leovich Oil Limited, Port Harcourt, from River State. What we did was that we tried to mimic the contamination in the lab. So the heavy metal contaminated soil that we collected was mixed with garden soil in 3 levels. We have 20% contamination, 50 and 100. And the garden oil was also spiked into 3 levels of contamination with the crude oil. We have 1%, 5%, and 10%, according to the method of Adeju method 2010. Both contaminated soil were now incubated for 1 month under humid conditions in the laboratory. Okay. So after 1 month, we pick samples from the 5, 25, 50, and 25, 50, and 100%. And then from the crude oil also, we took the samples to the lab for isolation and identification of the indigenous microorganisms. We are interested in those microorganisms that will survive in those contaminated soil. And we are thinking that making use of those these indigenous microorganisms will be cost effective. I know that maybe some of you have heard that we can make use of a mushroom to remediate soil. But mushroom is also of economic importance. But if you can get indigenous organisms from the polluted soils that can be used, those organisms that we know will survive despite the condition of the soil, those organisms can be employed for bio remediation or micro remediation, because actually I'm working with fungi, and that's why we are talking about micro remediation. We can also make use of bacteria, but our interest is in making use of the fungi in the contaminated soils. So this is what we do it. After this is the experimental design and then the treatment application. So what we did was that we collected the soil and then we introduced the organisms that we isolated from the oil polluted soil. We had 7 organisms that were, and then we have 1 control, and then we have, okay, so we have, for the heavy metal contaminated soil also, we use 5 organisms and then we have a control. We introduce them into the soil, and then we want to look at the ability of this organism to be able to break down hydrocarbon and then to take up the heavy metals. So the results. Okay, these were the organisms that were isolated from the polluted soil, and most of them were Aspergillus species. Some of them have not been identified. This is an ongoing research, and we are thinking that we might need to do molecular identification to confirm the identities of these organisms, so that if we are going to recommend them for use in bioremediation. Then from the heavy metal contaminated soil, we have rhizospores, Aspergillus. But basically, most of the organisms that were sold, that slide of some of the organisms that were associated, we have Aspergillus cereus, Coleotrichum species, Aspergillus stabilis, and Penicillium species. We also have in the heavy metal contaminated soil. So what I would say that some of the organisms are able to adapt to the toxic environment and survive. So they could be adopted in bioremediation. So we now look at the ability of this. Okay, from this table, some of these organisms were able, if you compare with what is in the control, they were able to take up lead. They are able to absorb lead from the environment and from the soil. So if they could be used, so this organism can be used for bioremediation before, it's like we want to recover the soil. We are working on breaking down those heavy metals, the hydrocarbons in the soil, so that the the soil can be useful again for agricultural practices. Sorry. So these are some of the organisms. The Aspergillus species were actually the most efficient in this research work. Now, Aspergillus, Stereus, A-flavus, and Niger and Colesbru species were isolated from polluted soil, and which disagree with the report of Raymond 2024. These Aspergillus species were predominant in both heavy metal and crude oil polluted soil, and the genus Aspergillus is a filamentous fungus known for its adaptability and wide distribution in various environments. Also, some of the organisms isolated from the, sorry, thank you, let me just. So in conclusion, all the selected strain of fungi isolated from both contaminated soil could be adopted for bioremediation of heavy metal contaminated and crude oil polluted soil for agricultural feed and safe production. Thank you.
Okay, I was just told that the next speaker, one prof is around. Maybe we're going to finish. It's just painful to me that I won't be able to ask all my questions. Maybe, but we finish. All the presenters will make their presentations.
and this research focused on the nematode and the soil, poor soil fertility. So how do we improve tomato production in Nigeria? It can be improved by undergoing several integrated approaches, which here we use quality seeds and pre and post management practices. Now we are talking about turning waste into something we really wanted and what can create wealth. So we talk about the agricultural waste. We have several agricultural waste, and I don't like to call it waste anymore because we can recycle them into different beneficial uses. And in this research work, we use different agricultural waste. These are what we can recycle into compost. So here we use Mexican sunflower, poultry manure to recycle into compost. And for the calcium source, we make use of snail shell to get the calcium powder. And for the nematicide, the bio-nematicide, we make use of that same waste product we call the stems and the leaf from the tomato itself as a bio-nematicide. Justification. Various management techniques have been adopted for increasing tomato yield and controlling nematode stress on tomato. The use of sustainable agronomic practices, fertilizer application, and botanica is being encouraged. However, there are depths of information on the use of compost, snail shell, and botanicals like tomato leaf under different growing conditions. My objectives are to determine the effect of compost and calcium salts on the growth and yield of nematode-infected tomatoes, and to investigate the efficacy of tomato leaf powder as bio-nematicide on the control of nematode. To compare the growth and yield of nematode-infected tomatoes under two growing conditions, and the two growing conditions were greenhouses and the open space. Materials and method. It was carried out at the Department's Crop Protection and Environmental Biology Faculty of Agric in University of Ibadan. And the experimental design was completely randomized design with 3 replicates. The amendments used were compost, the calcium, the tomato leaf, and the nematode extraction was carried out at the nematology lab in the Department of Crop Protection and Environmental Biology. So the processes of, the tomato leaf were dried and grinded into powder. And the experimental procedure was laid out where the soil was bagged in 10 kg soil with 32 treatments. So the data collected were growth parameters, the plant size, number of branches, and we also have the yield and yield component. The data was subjected to ANOVA for analysis, and the mean was separated by LSD at 5% level of significance. The results, we had results on growth parameters in response to compost application and nematode stress. We also have in response to compost and the compost and leaf, tomato leaf application. And we also have results on the fruits, on the flowers, and also on tomato leaf biomass accumulation. So from all the results we had, the results of the study reveals that there were variations between the plants in the greenhouse and on the field. And generally, the ones in the greenhouse did much better than the ones on the field based on the parameters gotten. And they also observed that the compost, the one subjected to compost, calcium, and tomato leaf, despite the infection from the nematode, they were able to perform excellently well. Even their fruit had good shelf life. So in conclusion, the studies demonstrate the beneficial effects of compost, tomato leaf powder, and calcium on the growth and yield of nematode-infected tomato plants under varying environmental conditions. And it underscored the importance of integrating organic amendment and nutrient management strategy to combat nematode infestation effectively. Future research should focus on the long-term impacts of these practices on soil health and nematode dynamics to develop comprehensive management strategy for increasing tomato production. Selected references. Thank you for listening.
Okay, good afternoon, my listener. Yeah, some people say I presented yesterday. That's true. But I'm standing for somebody, one of my boss, who have a flight canceled. She would have loved to be here. So I'm presenting a paper titled Determinant of Food Security Status Among Rural Households in Osun State. Presenting on behalf of Mojisola Falsiat Oyewole. Introduction: food, as we all know, is a basic human necessity. When it comes to a matter of food, everybody is involved, including the animals, even plants. So food security as a concept is seen as access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food. Nigerians face a high rate of food insecurity, especially in rural parts. Study objective: examine determinants of food security among rural households in Osun State. Global and national food security trends. Nigeria ranked poorly on Global Food Security Index. Food insecurity linked to poverty, conflict, climate change, and low productivity. So the study objective, as stated, is to ascertain the coping strategy used to ensure household food security. The second one is to determine the factor influencing the food security, while the last one is to assess the level of household food security in the study area. And the study have a hypothesis that states that some factor of dependent variables are significant to the household food security. The methodology: the study location is Osun State, southwest in Nigeria. Then the study sampled 30 local governments, majorly agricultural local governments. Then the population, as stated by NPC, is 3.4 million. The study used multi-stage sample to select 3 local governments. And these local governments were Ife South, Ife East, and Atakumonsa. Then the study went on to select purposively 6 wards, and 2% of households were randomly selected. The total sample is 150 respondents. The data collection instruments were structured questionnaire, which has its reliability at 0.85 split half method. Then the method of data analysis would use descriptive statistics, I-square, Pearson product moment correlation, and linear regression. Then the result from the socioeconomic characteristics of the respondents shows that majority of the household have 5 to 10 members. Education, 53.3% had primary education. Then the income monthly, the mean shows that the monthly income average is 36,000 naira. Then the occupation is majorly farming, 58%. Now on the coping strategy result, the study found out that one of the indices from the coping strategies from the ranking is buying less expensive foods. So some people adopted buying less expensive food. That's their coping strategies, which has the main percent of 1.65. The second one is consuming fewer items. The third one is skipping meals. Some people are skipping meals as a coping mechanism. Then the fourth one is changing consumption pattern. They are trying to rationalize food intake. Then the fifth one in the rank is buying food on credit. So that's what I don't know what the nation has turned people to. So then from the coping strategies, from the low ranking above, some people are picking leftovers at the event. And while some are sending members to eat elsewhere, and some people are stopping schooling because they want to feed themselves. Then on the food security status, 76% of the respondents were food insecure in the sample area. 24% were food secured, and you can see the percentage ratio. Then consistent with national rural food insecurity, the finding is consistent with it. Then the regression analysis shows that the occupation and monthly income determined the food security of the household. Conclusion: most respondents, the study concluded that education, moderate income, and farming occupations makes the household to be food secured. Then another one, the coping strategies, the study concluded that buying cheap foods and skipping meals are part of the coping strategies, while food security determined by occupation and income. Recommendations: the study recommends that there is need to encourage diversifications, promote off-farm employment, and support agricultural investment and reduce income volatility. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's been an interesting session. I don't know what Dr. Olaide is going to do, because I believe we have questions and comments, but we won't be able to take them. So you need to create a forum for us to have this general discussion before we all disperse. Thank you very much. A round of applause for all the presenters.
So let's stand up as we did yesterday from those years. We want to appreciate especially our excellent moderator. If you are sitting down, you are wrong. So we're going to clap starting from our first. We'll make it. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now, do you want to appreciate yourself? Not yet. Sit down. Right now, we are going to the final session of the conference. Are you guys just going in and out? What's happening today? See, I don't even know. I'm just restless. You know? AKA Elijah. Elijah is now, I told Professor Simpson, for those of you who were around for the first day, he joined us for the tree planting that will at 2 p.m. So he was there at 2 p.m. So I told him, Prof, give us 30 minutes. It may show up in the next 5 minutes or so. But we need to do two. Okay. We need to do 2 things quickly. Hello. We need to do 2 things quickly. Somebody just reminded me that you said yesterday that if you can contribute, we have some small get together. And I was asking, should we do it now or when we get to Port Noble? She said, we can do it now. So we are going to do it now. Whatever you have. Dr. Bishop, can you stand up? It's not compulsory. Whoever has anything, just raise your hand. She will come to you, take your pledge, then you give her the money. She's very accountable. We'll come back and tell you this is the amount we have raised. We'll set up a small committee. Oh, we can set up a committee now. Dr. Bishop, you are secretary. My friend here, what's your name, sir? Dr. Leia is the chair. Let's clap for him.
So you are secretary, you take notes. I think we just need one more person, right? Let's make the medical person so that she will advise us on the medical issues around this. What's the name, ma'am? Dr. Nofisa. Okay. So 2 ladies. I hope you are not intimidated. Okay. Let's thank for them for doing this for us. So your work starts immediately. So go around for them while we are doing this. Can we have a short break? How much break? Thank them to come in, sir. Yes. No, we are collecting stuff. I don't give us naira. Oh, the chair is now. Oh no, what's in my village? Don't ask me what's the name of your village. In my village, there's a song that they sing for those who want to be leaders in the community. Chieftaincy titles. Are you with me? You are not interested in getting the school of my village. Dr. Olajide, in my village, there's a song they sing for those who qualify to be leaders. Oma sọ pé olówó lolóye àfihàn. So if you don't have money, they now modernize that song. Only ẹni tó bá yọkùn ní kẹ́ gbówó fún. Ẹni tó bá yọkùn ló máa fún wọn lówó. Okay, thank you very much. You have 5 minutes break, or I should just invite Prof. We start now. Okay. I said I will call him. I'm calling now to come and speak. Okay, so you have Thankfully, all of us are moving to Paramundo. We are going to have the exercise. And I was also asking her, they get together. Should we do it this evening? What do we call burn camp or bonfire? Something like that. Can we just do something nice this evening? Because by tomorrow we'll be got my bag ready. What do we think? The committee will advise us. The committee meets quickly before we leave and report so that by the time we are leaving from here, we have a direction. Ma'am. Hello, ma'am. The donation we suggested yesterday, we have started collecting the money. So we set up a small committee. Ma'am, no university work with committees. We set up a small committee, 3-man, even though there are 2 women there, 3-man committee, 3-man committee shared by Dr. Leye, Dr. Bishop, and our Agia there. So whatever you have is safer, give to them. At the end of the day, based on what they have, they will decide or they will tell us the plan, then we can adopt. So in 2 minutes, we are starting the final. Thank you very much. Do we still have people online? Yes. Okay, people online, we appreciate you. Yes. We are going now to the. Okay. Oh, Atlanta.
Sorry, there's a question regarding.
We gave the information earlier that all online
regarding tomorrow
will be tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So we stick to that. Thank you.
Super. Hello? Hello?
Why wrapping up the conference today? That is what we have in the agenda. The conference has not ended. We have agenda tomorrow. No, we have.
Hello?
We still have the agenda, the program. Just check the program booklet. What we have the talk tomorrow and online presentations. Thank you. Yes, and the talk for those who are on site.